Short people. What's something taller people don't understand? If I gain 5 pounds, I may need a different size pants. 5 pounds is so much to a person with no place to put it. We see up into your nostrils all the time. We're at backpack height, and it's going to hit us in the face if you're not careful. Even if the object isn't that heavy, if my arms can't wrap comfortable around to hold it, I can't carry it. The overhead visor isn't going to do anything against the sun. That people won't respect you as much as a tall person in a professional setting. We don't need to ever clean those top shelves you say are dirty. I don't see them, thus they do not exist. When hiking with a taller person, why you just can't take one step across a chasm to reach the next place of solid footing. If Putin dies, what is the worst that can happen? Russia splits into nuclear-armed warring states. This is my vote for worst-case scenario. Basically, the world could wake up one day with a dozen more North Koreas. He comes back alive twice as powerful. The worst that can happen is his heartbeat is connected to Russia's nuclear missiles, and the minute he dies, they all launch all over the globe at the same time. A worse version of Putin, someone who shares his ideologies but doesn't care about politics and international relations. Like Yugoslavia after Tito, but with nukes this time. What are some that was way too close moments in history? Actually, we came closer on a later date. 9/26/83. The launch detection in a Soviet bunker malfunctioned and showed an American nuclear launch. The engineer twice dismissed launch warning because of the low number of missiles it showed. In his mind, American wouldn't launch only 5 missiles at a time, so he did nothing, and we're all alive today because he was rational. Here's to you, Stanislav Petrov. In 1957, a fire in the Sellafield nuclear power station, UK, burned through the HEPA filters and should have contaminated the whole north of England. This is known as the UK's biggest nuclear disaster. The UK was saved by a man named John Cockcroft, who during design insisted that a second set of filters be installed on the top of the exhaust towers. All others ridiculed this idea as expensive and redundant, and the towers became known as Cockcroft's follies. Folly equals lack of good sense, foolishness. These towers saved the UK, so we're very lucky for his folly. This is the story. Edit. I should add that while John Cockcroft's follies saved large portions of the UK, there were also a large number of people who disregarded orders and entered the reactor to try and manually hammer out the stuck uranium rods using scaffold poles to stop the reaction's fire. These people took large doses of radiation to stop the disaster. I'm glad that's a decision I'll never have to make. 2012 coronal mass ejection. The most powerful solar storm in 150 years occurred on July 2012. Scientists claim that the storm could have knocked out the entire modern world if it had arrived 9 days earlier. Luckily for us, it didn't hit, as the Earth was in a different position along its orbit. The Carrington event was a massive solar storm that happened in 1859 and directly struck the Earth. Its strength was such that it changed the Earth's climate for a while and infused the very air with so much electricity that telegraph wires around the planet erupted in flames or shocked their operators from feet away. If something like it had happened, or does happen today, it will radically affect civilization by physically destroying or incapacitating most of our modern technology. We are stupendously lucky this happened back when it did, when our technology was not a level that it affected the average person, but also close enough to time to us now, where we could record, appreciate, and prepare for an event like it in the future. Ogedai Khan, Genghis Khan's third son and heir, died in December of 1241. Prior to his death, a Mongol army under his nephew Batu and a general named Subutai had been given authority to conquer Europe, all the way to the Atlantic. Upon news of his death, they turned around and went back to help choose the next great Khan. No further Mongol invasion of Europe ever got beyond the planning stages. Now we can talk about the practical limitations of a steppe army campaigning all the way to the Atlantic successfully. Ignoring Attila the Hun managed to get as far as northern France and northern Italy 7 centuries earlier without proper siege equipment, but the Mongols had already successfully penetrated as far as Poland and Hungary, beating organized European resistance along the way without a lot of difficulty. It doesn't seem incredible to me that a military that could conquer China would have caused incredible devastation in Central and Western Europe. What does European history look like if large parts of it had been either devastated by foreign invaders or even ruled by a Mongol dynasty in the 13th century? We don't know, because one man who most people have never heard of drank himself to death and an otherwise victorious, well-led, well-equipped, and motivated army had to go home to decide who to take orders from next. What was once called a conspiracy theory but is now known as true today. CIA putting LSD in the water supply. Except it was only a handful of extremely small 800-pop towns in the American Southwest, and the outcome was not we have a mind control serum, but instead that deeply troubled a lot of rural elderly people who had no idea what was happening to them. Giving someone psychedelics without them having any idea is so cruel. That shit can be a nightmare when it goes bad. Harvey Weinstein sexually assaults many upcoming Hollywood stars was such an open secret, it was constantly referenced in media way before the Me Too movement. Netflix marketing team releases memes about shows to give off the appearance that everyone is watching said show. Since people have FOMO, they watch the shows to understand the memes until everyone eventually does watch it. Sexual abuse of children was being covered up by the Catholic Church. Or, if you want something lighter, gorillas used to be cryptids and were not a properly recognized species until 1902. The FBI sent a letter to Martin Luther King Jr. telling him he should kill himself. Happy Black History, folks. That the government is listening, spying on us. Which normal behavior habit of yours turned out to be a trauma response. Worrying nearly every day if someone is mad at me or offended by me. This is cause I grew up with an ill-tempered parent. This is mine too. Hypervigilance and being acutely aware of any slight change in someone's tone or mood. I always assume they are upset with me. It's exhausting. Starting to unpack this one myself. Constantly looking for outs in relationships, flaws, wrongdoing, circumstances. Unable or unwilling to ask for help. Hard to simply relax. An inability to express negative emotions to others. Trust issues. On one hand, I have made leaps and bounds in my professional life because I can just get shit done. On the other, I have such a deep and internalized fear of intimacy that I avoid deep connection. Dude, in all honesty, I realize I'm just fucking scared. I couldn't depend on my caretakers at various points in my life for different reasons and subconsciously decided that I would never let myself depend on anyone, ever. It's difficult at times because I get being genuinely emotionally vulnerable mixed up with codependency. I recently came across the term counterdependent, and I realize I'm just gravitating to extremes. Shutting down and saying nothing when people are saying mean things to me. Constantly apologizing for every little thing. If I'm extra anxious, I'll say it multiple times in a row. When someone tells me to stop saying sorry, I hit them with another, I'm sorry. Jumping to worst-case scenarios immediately and fearing uncertainty. What's an unsolved mystery that you find yourself thinking about regularly? I am curious about what really happened with the John Bennett Ramsey case, although I don't regularly think about it. Daniel Robinson. He went out into the field to take a water level measurement on a well near Buckeye, Arizona in June 2021. He hasn't been seen since. They found his vehicle in a ravine in the desert. His dad flew in from out of state and hired a private investigator and refuses to go home until he finds his son. I think about him at least once a week. The Tylenol killer of the 1980s. While it's easy enough to guess motive, I can't help but wonder if the same person is behind other diabolical mysteries/events. Malaysia Flight 370. I just can't imagine all those poor families wondering forever when their loved ones ended up. Asha Degree's disappearance. Little girl ran away from home back on February 14, 2000. I know the outlook is very grim, but I hate that she just seemingly vanished. The Beaumont children. 3 children in Australia vanished off the face of the earth in 1966. They had ridden the bus to go to the beach, as they regularly did, and some eyewitnesses saw them with a man they appeared to know. Local ones. Heidi Seaman, a girl my age who disappeared walking home from a birthday party. Erica Botelho, who disappeared the same year. Lena Sardar Keel, daughter of refugees, who disappeared from an apartment complex playground just a few years ago. But mostly, Lupita Cantu, whose case showcases such stunning police incompetence and sexism, I am still aghast. In short, she was kidnapped and murdered, but because she was seen driving her minivan with her presumed abductor, police decided she had simply run off and refused to investigate any further. Her body was actually found in a neighboring town 3 weeks later, obviously a homicide victim, brought back to San Antonio for an autopsy. But not identified because, again, she wasn't considered a missing person by the police. She was ultimately buried in a pauper's grave, unidentified for 20 years, and when her identity was eventually pieced together, they exhumed her, and there was a man in the grave, not Lupita. They simply misplaced her. There's exactly zero chance her murder will ever be solved because of all of this, and I remain angry for her family. Well, that's another episode of Ask Reddit in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.